Hey there, everyone. Welcome back. I am Sherry Dixon, your turnaround coach. And this week, I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about systems. One of the biggest things that I see happen in organizations that are struggling is that our systems are not completely aligned with what we need to do, or they're just not there at all. Now, it sounds silly, right? Of course, we have systems in place. And we may have all good intention to have systems in place, but I have to tell you, every one of the schools that I took over the last 16 years, systems were not in place. The thought of a system was there, but then the actual implementation of that system was lacking. In one of the schools that I went to, there were a few things in order, but they were taking care of kids that looked like kids from 50 years prior. Maybe not 50, but you get the drift. Sometimes it's easy to sit down, have something developed, keep passing it on, and even though it might no longer be working. So today I want to talk to you about how do you really dig in and figure out your systems, because it's not easy work. I'm going to talk to you about the pandemic a little bit. When the pandemic happened, I have to tell you, I think we had, previous to the pandemic, some pretty great systems in place. We had a system for our student arrival. We had a system for monitoring student attendance. So did they get there? Did they get there on time? What do we do if they don't? How do teachers take attendance? We had a system in place for what happens if there's a problem in the classroom, either with the teacher or with the students. We had systems in place for how do we do lunch? We had systems in place for how do teachers get their conference period? We had systems in place for dismissal. And even more than that, we had systems in place for the big events that took place throughout the year. So the first day of school. We had systems in place for our Christmas celebrations, our holiday parties, our student performances. We had, book fairs and wrapping up the end of the school year and end of the year celebrations and all of those things. Those systems were rock solid, y'all. Now, yes, I'm talking about education, but I want you, if you're a business owner, to really think about your systems prior to the pandemic, because I bet you had some of those in place. And then the pandemic happened, and none of us knew what we were doing. I'll be honest, at least in the school world, we didn't know what we were doing. And from what I gather, a lot of businesses didn't know what we were doing either. And life had to shift, and it had to shift quickly, because we were responsible for educating children, even through it all. A business owner is still responsible for paying bills, putting food on the table in their own house, or taking care of their employees. So even though the world shut down, life didn't shut down. Things still had to happen. And we all had to make adjustments fast with our systems. For us in particular, we spent days upon days sitting together as principals, district administrators, everybody from principal up, developing new systems on the fly. We didn't know what we were doing. We would always use the phrase, we're building the plane as it's flying in the sky, because that's how it felt. Were all of those systems rock solid? No. Did they do what they needed to do during that big time when we were all shut down? Maybe around 50% successful. And I bet you could say the same thing. However, that second year after the pandemic, I think, is when we really started to think about life different. I think the pandemic put us into a shock. I don't know if you would all agree with me, but I know for me, it did. I kept thinking, okay, I'm hearing this on the news, it's coming. And we've been shut down before in schools when the hurricanes would happen, or we'd get a winter storm, or whatever it is. And we all start to experience those things. And even for one of the hurricanes, Hurricane Harvey in particular, we were shut down for almost 4 weeks and everything had to change. So we've had periods of time, but they weren't quite like the pandemic when the entire world shut off. So when we came back and we were ready to do that next school year, that summer prior to the year starting was very hard because we had to sit down and we had to rethink everything because we didn't know how long this next period of time was going to last. And to be quite frank, I will say many of the systems we put into place at that point in time, especially with technology integration, have kind of continued to be in place in schools all over the world. But let's think about schools that after the pandemic continued to struggle and fail. Let's think about businesses after the pandemic that continued to struggle and fail and actually have to close their doors. And I don't know the answer to this, but did they redo their systems? Did they redo them, rebuild them in a way that was fitting the new times? Or were they just thinking, I can go back to my normal, and normal wasn't normal anymore? From the research that I've done, from the conversations that I've had, from the observing that I've done, the majority of the systems, the organizations that didn't work, their systems did not now reflect the new life. Or, and this is even more of a challenge, the systems didn't work. The leadership didn't know how to put in new systems, and so systems were not put into place. Now, you probably have figured this out about me, but I'm a planner. I like to think about the end. Where do I need to get to? And then do that reverse planning. Okay, let's break it down. What steps are we going to need to take to get there? And then what is that going to look like to get us started? That's just how my brain works. I like to really dig down and figure out why something isn't working. So then when I rebuild it, I can make it better and make it accommodating to whatever the new something is. It's a process. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a bit of time. It takes work. It takes a lot of brain power. But if we don't do it, that's one of the big areas that I see organizations failing. It's a big contributor. Now, you're probably listening to this today and you're thinking, wow, I don't even know where to get started on this. I think the first thing that I would suggest to you is to sit down and review your system. If you're a school, sit down and say, how do students come into the building every day? What does that look like? And is it working? If you're a small business, you might ask yourself, how do my customers come into my establishment if you're a brick and mortar? Or how do my customers find me if you're an online entrepreneur? If you don't know, there's a place to get started, because a business can't run without customers, right? I'm learning that right now as I'm starting this business and really working to establish my clients. The system may not be aligned with the work that needs to be done. I've had to take my own advice, my own processes, my own strategies, and really sit down and look at Sherry Dixon Consulting. And I'm going to tell you, it actually gave me an opportunity to develop this document. This document stays right here at the front of my desk so that I can reference it at any point in time. And it's my sales funnel. It's my system for how I am going to market and sell my services. I have it there printed, but I also have it on my computer because I have to adjust sometimes. As a matter of fact, I was listening to a podcast Saturday morning walking the dog, and it made me go, oh, I need to back up. I need to back up and I need to rethink this because this might make more sense for this area that I seem to be stuck in. It's okay to do that because even when you do develop a system, you're not writing it in permanent marker. If you are, don't write it in pencil. That's my joke, but really you have to know that sometimes these are working, living documents. And if you start to see that it's failing, you want it to fail fast so that you can adjust and get yourself the right system to be in place. All right, so we are on week number, I think number 5 or 6. I can't even remember. I'll have to go back in and look. So I've been coming to you a little bit here with turnaround processes, and I want to keep doing that because these are free to you. These are my little tidbits of advice each week that you can take to your school, your organization, even to your household management, and think about how you can make everything more efficient, more successful. However, if you do want to work with me, I'm going to provide a link in the notes so that you can connect with me and we can get you started on your path of success faster, better, and stronger. Because life moves fast, y'all, and we don't have time to fail slowly. If we're going to fail, let's do it fast and let's get it figured out so that we can get back on the track of success. Have a great week, and I will see you next week right here on your YouTube channel.